Howard, welcome to the CIO Zone.
Thanks for having me. It's a great talk with you today.
Tell our viewers a little bit about your company and what it is that you do and why you're here this week.
Mindshare Technologies is a voice of the customer company. So we specialize in multi-channel feedback of any company that has a customer-facing front. So we work with restaurants, we work with airlines and retailers, we work with hospitality industry, we work with call centers. Anyone that has a customer wants to understand what their customer is thinking and feeling about the experiences that they have. So a great example of that, many people have experienced this. They've gone to a restaurant, they've had an experience, and then as part of the receipt, maybe there's an invitation to take a survey either on the web or on the phone that lets you know how you did as an establishment. So that's what Mindshare does. Our specialty has been in taking that information and aggregating it up to the top of the organization, and that's important for an analytic perspective, but our specialty is really operational. We distribute that information down to the grassroots of our client organizations in real time so that local managers can make improvements today. So we like to think of it as, I'm sure you've watched plenty of football games, and you see those guys with the headsets on.
Yes.
Well, this type of operational monitoring is a lot like those in-game headsets. So before, coaches used to sit on the sidelines and they would hopefully spot things that players were doing that was incorrect. Maybe they could check the stats the next day as they went through the newspaper or through their own stats. But the in-game headset, that makes a big change. You've got somebody monitoring every facet of the game and coaching the players while they're still on the field, and that's a big difference than doing it later, a week later in practice. So if you have an operation, and you've got managers, you can train them the next week based on some data that you have. But being able to do it while the game's still going on, that's a big difference. So we focus on real-time operational improvement based on customer feedback.
And what size companies typically use your solutions?
All different sizes, really. Everything from the smallest, single restaurant store, all the way up to the big boys with thousands of locations. So it really is something that can fit for any of those different sizes. Everybody needs feedback. Everyone needs to understand what their customers are saying.
It also might help some people understand that IBM provides building blocks, not just complete solutions, but things that can be used by other companies to build solutions that are more specialized and perhaps comprehensive in certain ways.
Yes, in fact, that's something that we really enjoy about IBM is our partnership have worked very much that way. We take some of the pieces and basically the engines that they have and we plug them into our car body and then we produce something that our customers can use, but also in the places where we really do need a heavy-duty analytics visualization, they provide that too. So we can roll that out and it gets us ahead of where we would ever be if we tried to develop that ourselves. So we're really getting the best of both worlds there. Plug-in tools and engines, and also the applications for when we need them.
Could you give me an example, perhaps? I know you've been talking this week about some of your particular wins, if you will, where there's been very impressive outcomes.
Sure.
Would you mind sharing one of those?
This week, there's a joint press release that Mindshare and IBM and Hertz put together. Talking about Hertz, Hertz, the rental car company. And as you know, Hertz has a great brand, and they have a passion for their customer experience, and they have a reputation for delivering a great customer service. And so they use Mindshare Technology solutions to help monitor that experience and make sure that the brand is being delivered across all of their 8,000 locations. So I think the best way to explain that is kind of look at how our solution is used, maybe a day in the life of a location manager. So if you looked at the location, the Hertz at Los Angeles International Airport, a lot of rental cars go through that place. There's a lot of feedback that's gathered, and so we gather
in a lot of formats too.
Yes, absolutely. So web and voice, and so Hertz or Mindshare gathers for Hertz about. It varies, but probably around 800 surveys, 700-800 surveys in a month that store manager then has to react to, hopefully in real time, as we mentioned. So it's a lot of information. And Hertz is also a big believer in capturing the customer's experience in their own words. So they ask open-ended questions. Tell us in your own words what the experience was like. There's a lot of information trapped there.
How do they get, is this something, a piece of paper that's handed to them, or do they do it on the web?
Yeah, there is an invitation given, but then the survey is actually performed electronically and Mindshare can do it on the web or on the phone. That's primarily the two ways, and it's an automated survey both ways.
Yeah.
So that unstructured feedback is really, Hertz gets a lot of great information about the customer experience from our survey already, but they really wanted to unlock what was in that unstructured data.
I really like that a lot. I know, I'm sure anyone who's traveled, you get to a hotel and they give you this card with 4 questions that have nothing to do with what you're upset about, and that's all you can say. And it's very frustrating. So obviously getting the customer's own words.
I didn't have that. And the
choice of a certain word could really give it a certain character that it might not have with just black and the dot kind of thing.
Really detecting the sentiment, especially in voice. That's something you can really tell someone's tone if you're listening to a spoken comment. But the name of the game today really is this unstructured data. It's just taking off. It's being driven by social media because that's all unstructured. And everyone wants to be able to unlock the data that's trapped inside unstructured feedback and data,
according
like text.
to the number that I've heard thrown about this week was about 80% of an organization's useful data is unstructured, and the number is growing.
Yeah, Merrill Lynch, the sources that I had for that, Merrill Lynch and it was Goldman Sachs that I found, they both independently arrived at a similar number right there around 80%. It's also interesting, too, that IDC predicted that it's growing at about around 61%. And so you couple 80% of your data is unstructured, and then it's growing at a click of 61%. That's a big problem.
Amount of it. I
looked at our data at Mindshare even. When I heard that, I thought, I don't know if I believe that that's true. So I went and talked to the DBAs and said, all right, let's figure this out. What percentage of our data is unstructured? And 83%. That's our data. And it is
when they come up with a rule like that. It's great.
In our case, it did work.
But it's a staggering number when you think about it.
It is, and the growth rate is pretty accurate for us as well. I mean, we're seeing, like I said, people want to leave their experiences in their own words. I think that's really why social media is taking off, isn't it? I mean,
they want a voice.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I actually like to talk about systems like Mindshare's experience. Mindshare's system where you can leave your experience with a company and hopefully get some response and maybe get a problem fixed, or even if you're leaving something that's maybe some kudos, you can expect that somebody will get a pat on the back for a job well done. So you couple that, and Mindshare certainly isn't the only company that's doing that. Feedback is huge right now, but also social media is giving customers a forum as well. We're really entering an age of the super empowered customer where, as customers, we all have a voice now that we never used to have.
So what's Hertz doing with all this data that they're getting back?
So back to our store manager and that, they have a lot of it, 8,000 stores, but it's easier to visualize just for one store. That store manager, he has to sift through that information, and we have reports that he can look at that. But when it comes to the unstructured, he's either got to read or listen to all of that data. And they capture, because they believe in it heavily, about 70% of their surveys have unstructured comments. So, call that 500 or 600 comments that manager has to listen to.
That's significant.
It is. It's a lot of time. So what will end up happening typically is they will focus in on maybe problems, because we've got a little bit of structured data that they can look at. They'll focus on just the problem areas, and they're leaving on the table all this other great information. So what we first did with Hertz is we collaborated and we came up with a way of tagging those comments, so that then you could trend it over time. You could say, all right, how many vehicle issues am I having? How many cleanliness issues am I having? How many fuel issues am I having? And that from a reporting perspective was very successful, but the problem was how it was getting tagged, so that the store managers themselves were going through and reading and listening to those comments and tagging them.
I'm sure every store manager had a different view.
Exactly. A huge consistency problem. So you couldn't really depend on that data to be consistent, and that's
very tough when you get to analytics.
You need data that you can trust, or you're going to, the decisions, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? So they turned to us and said, all right, what can we do here to automate this process? And of course, to do that, you're talking text analytics at that point. So we looked around to try and find the best technology that would work for this. And what we found is that IBM had the best show in town for a lot of different reasons. So I believe, this will sound like an IBM ad, but it really is after lots of research. But for what we're doing for short, small comments, a lot like you'd see in social media or in a feedback setting, the technology that IBM has, it really is game-changing. It's a fantastic technology that they have both for monitoring text that's flowing through the system and also discovering new things about that text. So it's
very timely, given the way people are communicating these days.
Oh, it is. So I think we're going to see a lot of great things coming out of IBM in the next little while.